Hello and welcome into the SorareAndrews podcast. I am Andrew Laird, also known as Lairdino on Sorare, joined as always by Andy Black, known as Black on Sorare. You can find me on Twitter at RotowireAndrew. Andy is ablack86. This week's topic, SO5 strategies, which you may have gotten from the title of the podcast that you just clicked on, or the video you clicked on. I asked Andy before we started recording whether we should start with one topic or another, and it seemed like it was a bit of a chicken and the egg, and we didn't pick a chicken or an egg. So I think I'm going to have to flip a coin here.
Yeah.
But basically, the discussion was: should you think about what contests you're entering before you know what cards or lineups you're going to play, or should you just get a bunch of cards and then figure it out? Andy, I started my Sorare journey by buying MLS cards in the MLS offseason. So there was no thought of like, oh, I'll just build stuff for now, or I'll buy some cards to enter now. I bought cards, admittedly, because they were cheap, because it was the offseason. But I think if you're starting out, the smartest thing to do is figure out really where you want to end up and then work your way from there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it really is situational. So if you have money, I mean, it's a lot different than somebody that's coming in on a budget trying to, maybe purchase players for next season or the fall season. So I'm going to stress that a lot today, that a lot of the topics that we're going to discuss are situational and really depend on your situation.
Mm-hmm. And usually that situation depends on your budget.
Yeah.
Not completely, but maybe 90%.
I think so, yeah.
So I want to go back to this point that I attempted to make a second ago. So like I feel like so much of the how do I get started in Sorare? Like, what's the easiest way in? Everyone's like, well, play global all-star for the threshold. There we go.
There you go.
Tried to combine it all together, which we know is changing a little bit, or drastically. We don't know how big the change is. We do know it's changing, at least to be more aligned with US dollars. That hasn't happened yet. We're taping this April 29th, 2021. Sometime in May, I believe, we're going to the $30 for 250 points and $15 for 205. That, of course, is paid in ETH anyway. So if ETH continues to go up, then those will go up. But so I feel like the strategy is like get 5 players or 4 and use a common goalkeeper and just kind of grind out. And I feel like the idea with that is, earn ETH week to week, game week to game week, and then you can buy some more players. And we kind of ignore that the progression is usually based on entering the regional contests after that, not necessarily like that you're going to play global D4, global D3, and work your way up that way.
Yeah.
So I almost feel like the strategy, and obviously it depends on the time of year because of the seasonalities. But theoretically, right now, you shouldn't go in and buy 5 European players because the off season is coming. But like, should the advice really be more about buying 5 players within one league so that you can progress to the regional tournaments as opposed to just playing global all-star?
Yeah, I mean, that might be the end goal. You might start with 4 players or 3 players that are all kind of grouped together, but the end goal, sure, might be 5 players that are all from the same region. But yeah. I wouldn't, like, if you're finding deals on players from different regions and you're able to put them together to form a D4 team, I would say stick to that for now. So if you have some Asians and Americans and you're kind of putting those together to put a D4 team, all-star D4 team together, then I wouldn't say that I would like abort mission and only start buying the Asians or Americans. You might start to, like, as you decide to add on, that is something to think about. Like, okay, I have 3 Asians now. If I get 2 more, I can enter them into the regional Asian tournament. And then I'm only now I'm 2 away on my All-Star D4 team, so I'm gonna have to pick up 2 players there as well. So you start robbing from this lineup, and then you got to start adding back to this one, and you'll see a lot of that. But I think that's a big part of the way that this game is played, and I think that's why one of the everyone always says, well, we'll go start an All-Star D4 with a common goalkeeper because it's cheaper entry, and you really get a feel for like what the progression of this game should be like, and how am I supposed to play, because there's going to be a billion guides out here. The number of content creators and people creating guides, how to play, and all this, you really just got to experience it for yourself to really know what it is.
Yeah, I think one of the things I keep stressing, because we have a lot of new people, like from RotoWire subscribers, who are like, "Hey, how do we do this?" And there really is no right way to play, and that's like ignoring the. You could play just to flip cards. You could play just to accumulate cards. Like there's a whole bunch of different stuff of how you can theoretically like play Sorare. But I think the key is you want to progress in the game, and how you progress is going to be different. And so like the guide of like buy these cards, and then you can buy these cards, and then you can buy these, like that might not work for you. Like there are a number of people that I talk to who are really into MLS, and it's like, should I play the Asia tournaments? And it's like, do you have any interest in Asia? And they're like, no. I'm like, then don't. Like, nobody's making you do it. Like,
right.
So like, if you want to just stick with MLS, like you can do that. And we've kind of mentioned on a few other podcasts before that, obviously the prizes of each tournament are dependent on what the tournament is. So if you don't want to win new tier 3 Asia cards, don't play the Asian tournaments. And so you can kind of build your lineup, build your gallery. We're not calling it gallery anymore, are we? Build your club.
Yeah, that's it.
Excuse me. Like build your club to what you want to win. Like I think a lot of my own thinking is just like, okay, like what do I do now? What do I do now? And I think recently I've started to be like, wait a minute, like what do I want to win, and how do I get there? And I'm kind of like, now I'm working my way back.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if you do get to the point though where you acquire enough Asians or whatever to like submit a lineup, you might as well just lump it in there, because I'm at that point now where like I have Asian lineups. I've actually sold out of some of the players just because it's not that appealing to me, but I might as well lug together a lineup and really low effort, throw it in there. I don't even check for DNPs or anything. I get 5 guys that played good last week. They're playing again this week. Throw them in there. Hope it hits. But I mean, I could also just sell out of all of those cards as well. But I feel like there's some benefit to at least having a lineup there and being able to throw it in there, just for the sheer fact that there's going to be midweeks and stuff where I need an extra goalkeeper, let's say for All-Star, and now I have those assets that I can pull into All-Star in case I have one MLS goalkeeper playing that week, but I have enough midfielders to complete 2 lineups. So there's benefits in holding some of those players. Just it's not really my intentions in competing heavily in those regions.
Yeah, I mean, you could even just make the argument that if you get lucky one week and you win a card and you can sell it, and like that's going to help you if you're going to buy from a different region. At least now you have a little more F to play with. And
sure.
I've been getting rid of a number of tier 3 Asia cards. So thank you for everyone who have been buying those. So how do you start, like when you put your lineups in? It's a Thursday, so we're going to have to do all our lineups tonight. Are there certain regions that you start with? And if so, do you start with them because you're like, this is what I want to win this week? Or is it like, these are the cards that I always start with because they're my favorite cards, and where do I put them? Like, how do you do it?
Yeah, I start in the regionals, but there's a lot of different opinions on this. Like if you go watch Quinny's streams, his go-to is All-Star D3 because they offer so many star prizes. I think that All-Star D3 has is it nine tier 0 cards, or
I think that's right.
There's a bunch. It's more than any other region. So that's where he targets because there's more available star level prizes. I target the regions, and then I kind of all-star ends up being kind of my leftovers, which usually my leftovers are pretty good players, so it's not that big of a deal. I mean, obviously my strongest teams will be in the regionals,
Right.
But I think part of my reasoning for this is bad strategy. My goal should not be the most lineups. My goal should be the best lineups. But I have this it's like this inner demon that's like, you got to do more lineups, more chances to win, right? No. And I have a really hard time fighting that inner demon, I'll call it, that just keeps telling me, hey, you need more lineups. I don't. Play your best lineup.
Yeah. Why do you think prioritizing the regions is better than an all-star?
Well, I don't think it's better. I do it because I can submit more lineups if I do that.
Oh, okay. So that's what you do.
Yeah. So if I submit my lineup in All-Star D3, for instance, first, I might rob a U23 player, or I might rob an Asian player that I can no longer use in that region, and I may not be able to submit that lineup now.
I got you.
Which, as I said, submit your best lineups, not the most lineups. But I'm going to make that mistake again this week because I do it every week and to a fault. I'll get better at some point. At some point, I'm going to be cured of this disease, but not yet.
I think the thing that works in your favor in terms of, what I was going to say is I think that All-Star's harder. Obviously, D4 is, when we have over 6,000 entries, it feels like a bit of a lottery. So that doesn't mean that the other ones are easy, but theoretically they're easier. Now, I will say that of the 6,000 entries, like the last weekend, there were just over 6,100 entries in Global D4. And it's 130 spots that get paid, and that's going to change sometime next month, we're told. We don't know how many more, but as HG said last week, it's going to be a tier 3 party. So
can't wait for this party.
So let me see if I can share this with you, because I wonder if this will work. Oh, that wasn't it. Hold on. So the idea is if you're putting your best lineups, like, do you think if you prioritize your best lineups, they go into global? Or do you think your best lineups still are the regional ones, which, like, maybe your strategy actually is the correct one, but you're doing it for the wrong reason?
I don't know.
Yeah.
And maybe that's part of the problem. I think I probably should put some more priority on All-Star D3 after kind of seeing what other people do and just the better tier 0 prizes there. And every once in a while I'll have a really close lineup, and then I'll rob some other ones, and then I'll make a really good All-Star D3. That's kind of what it comes down to, is there's only so many really good cards in my gallery. So I can only submit so many really good lineups in the end. So, and then, you have injuries and stuff too, to where or a suspension this week, whatever. And then you're really starting to rob Peter to pay Paul. So yeah, I think my strategy needs to be focusing more on All-Star D3 and less so on submitting the most possible lineups.
Right. So this, apologies for those listening just on the audio, but I have this this graph up that's basically the most recent game week, showing kind of what you need to win a card for each tournament. All-Star was the hardest last week, but like the week before, like Champion Europe was was the hardest, and then Challenger Europe, like we get high scores in some, and I think there are a lot of people who may start building stuff, and they're just like, well, as long as I score, they kind of use the idea of the F threshold in Global All-Star to the other regions, and just say, well, instead of me trying to build a lineup that scores 205 or 250, I'm just going to build a lineup that scores 320. And like, if that's my goal every week, then a decent amount of time, I'll win a card, and it'll be a tier 3 card, but it's a card nonetheless. And sometimes all your guys, they just go nuts, and so you're perfectly fine with those guys. But I don't know, like I still haven't decided. Like we've talked about this. Like I have this River Plate stack that I've been playing recently in Champion America, and I'm still not completely convinced it's the right move to play it there as opposed to Global All-Star. I kind of put this MLS team together, and I haven't played a single MLS player in Champion America until this midweek, and it's only because one of my River Plate guys was hurt. So I'm playing MLS guys in Global and that's making me then not play some of the European guys I have, because I'm like, I got to use my MLS guys. I didn't buy them to sit them. So I'm kind of in this weird cycle as well of like, I've prioritized one lineup that I then have decided to put in one contest, which then robs it of any of those guys somewhere else. It's a 5-player River Plate stack, and I'm like, it's silly to split it.
Yeah,
it might make more sense to. So
you think it would make more sense to split it up?
It might be. Like Nicholas De La Cruz is U23, so I'm not playing him. I haven't played him in U23 yet. I have Boré, who might not be my best forward. And if I'm playing him with the other guys, I'm just doing it because he happens to play for the same team. I'm doing it basically hoping for decisive correlation of one of my guys assists his goal. But like, there are plenty of other guys on the team. Like this specific game week, they scored twice. I didn't get any goal. I didn't get any assist.
I think what I would do with that lineup personally is I would play the best players and remove so the defensive stack with your goalkeeper is probably the sweetest part of that lineup. You've got Diaz and what's the other guy? The guy that takes PKs.
Oh, Anguilari, yeah.
Yeah. So then, I mean, you put them with Cruz, and then put your best forward in that lineup. Whoever your best forward is, whoever you have the best chance of getting a decisive action with, put in that lineup, and then if it's somebody from a different region, then you play an all-star. Mm-hmm. If it's an American, then maybe you still consider keeping them in Champion America. But I think that's what I would do with that lineup. Is I would make that your money lineup.
Yeah, so like the only reason I like playing a lot of the River Plate guys in Champion America is because so many people have MLS guys. So it's like I think there's a little bit of this DFS mentality of trying to get a little differentiation because if I get these goals, then nobody else is going to have them.
Right.
But like, there aren't duplicate lineups. Like, nobody's going to have my exact 5. I mean, it's possible. Anybody can go out and do it.
Right.
But I think I kind of prioritize that a little too much. But I also am like, maybe I'm better off playing De La Cruz in Champion America, because if everybody has him, they obviously should play him in U23. So if I don't, if I play him in Champion America, then I have this differential. So like, that's actually what I wanted to bring up to you also. Like, how often do you play U23 guys not in a U23 tournament?
Only when I have like better options already in U23. So, and I have that typically, like most game weeks, I'll have like good U23 players not playing in U23. So that's not really something like I'm all that concerned about, like whether or not I'm forcing them into those lineups or not. I just focus, like, U23 is probably like one of my biggest areas of focus, D3 and D4. So usually I put my best lineups there.
Yeah, I think you've said that before, that you kind of prioritize that one.
D3 especially.
Right. Yeah, I just think, I mean, Sorare hasn't been around enough, I feel like, for me to have any sort of like conclusive, like, no, you should definitely always play U23s and U23, but it sure feels like it makes sense.
You kind of mentioned earlier where like you have that differential where you have like, all the River Plate guys and Champion America and maybe other people won't. I think that works in DFS because the player pools are smaller, but the player pools in Sorare are so massive. It's like there's going to be other players that go off that week, and it's not like you're gaining an advantage by picking a player that has like a low salary cap hit. So, like in DFS you might use a guy with a low ownership because he has a low salary cap hit, but it doesn't matter in Sorare. Like, you might as well just pick your best player. And there's going to be people that cancel them out because, yeah, you have Cruz and he scores 100, but if Zelleran or Gill score 100 as well, there's going to be 100 or I don't know. What is there, like 75 of those in existence? There's going to be like 60, 65 of those played in Champion America to cancel you out anyway. So it's not like you're going to have that one. Oh, and also too, since the scores are capped, like it's not like you can score like in like 150 points with one guy that just goes completely off. Like your score is still capped, so you can only gain so much of an edge off of one player. And then when there's going to be like players that are similar in the same region, anyways, like it's very rare that there's just going to be one guy that's over and away better than everybody in a region. It'll happen, but it's, I would say, pretty rare with how vast the player pool has gotten in these regions. So I don't think that the advantage like of doing that is like all that big of a deal.
I'm starting to come to that realization pretty quickly.
It's like just make your best lineup.
Right. Well, it's funny because there's like a DFS like joke of like just play the best plays, but like in Sorare, like they act that is exactly what you should do. As long, meaning your best plays, just you can't, not everybody can go out and just get, Mbappe and Ronaldo and all those guys. So we kind of like mentioned stacks a few times. Obviously, I think most people don't try to do what I am attempting to do with this 5-player stack. But the goalie defender or goalie 2 defenders, like that seems to be the most reasonable. Like I think everybody really likes the idea of like, I'm going to get a midfielder and a forward or like 2 midfielders and they're going to like hook up for a goal and I'll get all these points. But like, it just really doesn't happen that often. Like league leaders in, get the whole like goal to assist combo, like the highest you'll find is like 7 in an entire season.
Yeah, that's great.
So like, I think if you're somebody who is starting out and you have like, if you have a defender or, you have a common goalkeeper, I think it makes sense to get a defender from that team. But I'm not sure the midfielder forward or 2 mids or 2 forwards makes the most sense. How do you feel about that? Those
100% agree. So, I mean, I think if you wanted to, like the whole team stack is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Like you can get like you had with the 5-0 River Plate game. Yep. Yeah, you're going to do well that week, regardless of, whether all of your guys hook up together on decisive actions. You're going to have a good week. But how often are they going to win 5-0? I don't know. Apparently fairly often, right?
Depends on the team.
Right. So I think that I would be less intrigued with the like midfielder forward correlation, and I would be more focused on correlation with defenders and goalkeepers for the sheer fact you get the clean sheet bonus on all 3 players if you do the full 3 stack.
It does seem like a situation that you should never split though. Like if you have a goalkeeper and a defender, I don't think there's a situation where what's that?
Why split them, right?
Right. That's what I mean.
Yeah. I think you're 100% right. I think that like they should always go in lineups together. Like I have Mancini and Pau Lopez, who may be hurt now, but they should always go together. And I've got Magnan and or Mignon.
Mignon, yeah.
And I'm gonna pronounce it how I want to pronounce it. And Font and Botman now. So they're going to go together. There's no reason, unless I want to play Botman over in U23 or something. But for the most part, they need to go together.
Yeah.
If I believe in them enough to put them in a lineup, then I need to believe that they can get the clean sheet and really hammer home victory for me.
I think I think it's reasonable to play 2 defenders without the goalkeeper if you don't think the clean sheet is that's the problem, is that like relying on the clean sheet is just so tough because anything stupid can happen. Like River Plate last night, conceding at 90 plus 4. So
good play, right?
Was that but like defenders can score well enough without a clean sheet. I mean, they can get decisives. They can do that. They can score enough points. The clean sheets for defenders at 10 points is like losing that is not going to kill you.
Sure.
A goalkeeper losing it, you're dead in terms of like scoring really, really highly.
That said, clean sheets are so unpredictable. Like,
right.
You can't predict it. Even if you have a bad matchup, I would still probably pair them together 9 times out of 10. I mean, unless the matchup is just god awful, horrible. You're playing PSG away or something. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, I think you got to really play those stacks together, because if somehow you do get the clean sheet, the score is going to be really good. And like, you can put any other goalkeeper in there, even with a great matchup. River Plate happens to them and they lose the clean sheet, and now they have 35. So yeah, I think it's so unpredictable that it's hard to say that, yeah, you should split it up, because it's unpredictable.
Right. Yeah. I mean, also just like dumb things happen, like penalties happen, or just like mistakes can happen. And really the worst thing is to be in such a huge matchup that you concede once and make no saves. Like you have like the worst situation where like there's just nothing from your goalkeeper because the matchup was too good, but they happen to give up the 1 goal on some fluky move, and you're kind of dead that way.
Yep.
Just why we hate goalkeeper, or I hate goalkeepers so much.
I hate goalkeepers too.
Yeah. Yeah. The good news is we get to pay so much for them.
That's right.
So I have this note here about lineup building that like, because somebody was asking me today, they were like, is it better to target guys who kind of like score really well when they play, mm-hmm. or guys who always play, but just like don't really score that well? And it's weird to like tell somebody like, it really doesn't matter. Like if you're playing for now and you want to enter contests and like play for the F threshold, you really shouldn't buy players who like kind of play sometimes, but they score well when they do. Like I hate like telling people this, because like, well, this guy's definitely better, but if he's only playing every other game, every third game, like you just have to realize you're going to get zeros often. And like, do you want to pay for that? So like playing time still is like the most important thing.
I mean, guys, I don't know what guys are like that, but I mean, if they have DNPs and they're unpredictable, then I don't ever want to own them. Honestly, DNP avoidance is the single most important point of this game. I mean, if you have a DNP, you are dead. That lineup is dead. Maybe you can still scrape together enough threshold with a DNP, but DNP avoidance, doing your research. I mean, I'm saying this and I'm offering this great advice to people, but I made that mistake again this week. I played Mancini this week and he was suspended. Short week, I should know this. I should avoid this. And I mean, these mistakes are a lot of people are out there making them. And this was a simple one. I mean, there was not very many games being played this midweek, and I totally missed it. So DNP avoidance, if you're catching yourself in a bad run, like I'm in a bad run right now, haven't been winning rewards, a lot of it is my own doing. I need to do more research. I should have caught that. Granted, if I would have caught that, I still would have had Menza with a surprise DNP and it wouldn't have mattered. But still, you have to when you can miss a DNP, miss the DNP.
Yeah, I think it's just weird to like give that advice of like, this guy looks really good when he plays. And it's like, well, if he's not playing, he's not going to look that good in your lineup, just throwing up zeros.
I guess an example of that type of player might be a guy that like subs on, like Wondolowski would be not a good example anymore, but like in his previous years where he would like sub on and get a goal, Yeah, that looks pretty good on the score sheet when you're popping 60s off every once in a while, but that's not really what you want, because if they have a lead, they may not sub him on, and then you're screwed that week. So, yeah, I want guys to play. Every week they're playing.
Yeah, well, I think the other point of that, because you were saying like maybe you can scrape together 205 from your other 4 guys. That only works in one tournament. Like, and if you're entering a bunch, like you are dead everywhere else. So yeah, you're just you're stuck there a little bit. So we have a bunch of questions about captains. I actually want to play
really bad advice here.
Let me before we get to captains, actually, let me I'll tease that one. But we have some questions about like whether you should play 2 defenders or 2 midfielders or 2 forwards. And the really bad answer is it always depends. Like if there's a really great matchup and you have 2 forwards, we were talking earlier this week, a few guys that I was looking at. I was like, well, this guy is really a midfielder, but his card is a forward, so I can like fill a forward spot with a midfielder. Or maybe it was vice versa. It was definitely vice versa. It was a forward who had, it's a forward whose card, or it's a midfielder whose card is a forward. And you were like, yeah, but he doesn't get any of the kind of the peripheral points, the tackles won and all that stuff. Like the forwards don't get those points. And so I think that's one of the things you have to consider when you have, if you're looking in a lineup to play 2 forwards, you're playing them basically for decisives. Like if they don't get on the score sheet, you're probably looking at 60 combined points, maybe 70, which really isn't usually enough. So then everyone's like, well, I'll just play 2 midfielders then. It's like, well, if you play 2 defensive midfielders and, they both have like okay games, then the 2 forwards that the other guy played, then they both scored, now you're dead. So like that's kind of the reason why I feel like there's no like specific answer for it. But do you feel any differently?
Yeah, I do. I think 2 forwards is typically a bad play. Obviously, we're always limited by what's in our gallery or our club, but so make the decision that suits you. But I think most of the time, 2 midfielders or 2 defenders is the right play. If you get that defender goalkeeper stack, great. The midfielders, I mean, I think for the most part you want attacking midfielders. That way you're more prone to get the decisive action along with the big all-around score. And I mean, we can rip off all the names of the guys that we see. They're always one decisive action away from 85 points because they churn up to 60 with their all-around. So, I mean, those are the guys that I dream to have in all my lineups one day. I mean, I would love to have 2 midfielders that are like that in all my lineups. Like that would be my, if money wasn't a barrier, then all my lineups are going to have 2 midfielders that can churn 60 points through all around, and then always have that option of really popping off into the high 80s with decisive.
Yeah, it's always nice to get to the 80s with a single decisive instead of needing 2 of them.
Yeah.
Because we obviously see plenty of them like that.
If you're a forward, you need 2 decisives to get over 80, really.
Usually, yeah. I think from the DFS terminology are basically like floor and ceiling. And so we kind of talk about in DFS, at least, you want more floor guys for like cash games because you don't have to beat as many people.
Yeah.
But in order to win tournaments, you need guys who like it. You should be playing tournaments as if you're going to come in first or last. And so if you're like primarily a tournament player, there's a lot of losing that goes on. But when you win a ton. And so I think I kind of keep going back and forth with this on Sorare because as of now, it's hard to win cards. Certainly in Global All-Star. Like I actually think playing 2 forwards in Global All-Star is okay because, but you need.
Do they have a higher ceiling than an attacking midfielder? We'd have to look at the data. We should have done that beforehand, but
it's too much data.
Yeah, I think attacking midfielders are going to have just a higher overall ceiling. It just takes too many decisive actions for a forward to get there.
Well, the ceiling, that's the funny thing. The ceiling's 100. Like, we know you can't get above 100. And so it's kind of like, what, I guess you have to look into that. Like, what does my player normally do?
Mm-hmm.
And then what does he have to do to get to 100? And in this matchup, do you think he can get there? And I guess you're right. Forwards generally, they need to have huge games. I mean, Chicharito last week, hat trick, didn't get 100.
Right.
Which is wild. But like,
somebody else just had 3 decisives and had less. I think it was Casper Prisbett. I'm not even try. Yeah, not even going to try.
Sergeant Bilko. Yes, that's right. 2 goals and assist, or 1 goal, 2 assists. I forget what it was last night. And he was less than Chicharito. So yeah, maybe you're right. I have this Michelin defensive stack that is going to fit right into this because we were talking about that there. Well, I feel like we didn't mention one of the benefits of the goalkeeper defender combination is you can do it somewhat cheaply because goalkeepers are so unpredictable and clean sheets are so unpredictable that if you're willing to stack, a goalkeeper and 2 defenders and they happen to get a clean sheet, like, you're well on your way. And like, every team gets clean sheets. It's not like a team will go through an entire season with 0. Now, granted, you probably don't want the team that has like 2 of them,
right?
But if it's 6, 7, like, that's not so bad. If
that's
you can
6 or 7 weeks that you have good correlation.
Yeah.
And all you need is pretty good performances from your midfielder and forward to pick up a card. So
right. Let me see if I can. Is this it? Yeah, this was it. So, I mean, the defensive scores in this line are ridiculous. So, this was game week 136. Michelin, what is this? And beat Eupen 3-0.
And Michelin is like, what are they like? They made the playoffs, so they're a decent like mid-table type of team.
Yes. So they win 3-0, and their 2 center backs score almost 200 points with no decisives.
Yeah.
The right back hit 100, and of course you get 77 from the goalie because he gets the clean sheet. I mean, we have the guy who scored goals, 78 points, 71 and 62. Like, you're better off with the center backs who didn't score in this huge game. So yeah, like, I think if you're looking to stack, and
what is the average cost of those 2 center backs?
Right. So
not a lot.
The way that the market has gone, these guys cost basically the same today, April 29th, as they did on this game, which was January 23rd. And they were like 0.03.
Yeah.
Each. So, and the goalie obviously can be expensive. Although, frankly, if you have a common goalie, if you had him, that's still like 35, 38, 9 points. And plus you're at 230 with 3 players.
Right.
So, like, I think that one of the easier ways to get correlation and upside for relatively cheap is this stacking technique. And here's an example of it. Now, these guys don't do it all, every week, but like they get enough and it's fine.
That's why they're cheap, is because they don't do it every week.
Right.
And, I think we were kind of talking about this earlier, but I think these types of defensive stacks are more prone to success for somebody with a smaller budget, because if you have a bigger budget, you really don't need to stack, because you're buying really good players that typically perform well every week. The point of stacking is to get them to perform well in the same weeks, but they can all perform bad together. That's fine. If they want to be bad, 9 weeks out of 10, whatever. And then that 10th week, they all hit together. That might be your week to, maybe you just win a tier 3 or something with that, but maybe that's a podium lineup right there where you have 77, 93, 97, and that's before bonuses. Maybe your midfielder and forward each get a decisive action each, and I think then you're really talking about a podium type of lineup. And it takes persistence though, and patience. you're going to lump those three guys together, and most weeks they're not going to score well, and they're not going to score well enough to win you a prize, and you're going to get frustrated. And easy for me to say persistence is going to win there, but eventually they're going to get a clean sheet and they're going to score well together. I don't know how many weeks like we look at this together and they all 3 or 4 scored well together, but I looked at some other teams and I looked at some bottom of the table teams, and even they have correlation on the weeks that they did well. And I think Eupen was one of the ones that I looked at, and I think even Waslin Beveren, the team that's getting relegated,
yep,
they had some correlation on their goalkeeper and defender. So it's possible, and you can do it affordably, but you have to be really patient.
I'm really bad on that patient part.
Me too. Got to buy a better player, and then you break the combos and you start going off in another direction, and it never pays off.
Yeah, I think that is kind of a great point, though, that like if you're willing to wait for the big game, the correlation between goalkeeper and defenders is obvious, and Sorare scoring is made for them to work out well together. Obviously getting decisives is hugely helpful. Clearance off the line will get you there. And those are kind of like those are something that you can say, you can't project that on a week-to-week basis. I think this is the week that he's going to clear ball off the line. But the correlation just makes a little too much sense to not at least try it if you're starting out, of just saying like, maybe I'll just buy the 2 center backs from this lower team. And, if you have the common goalkeeper from that team, then, you're not, we've seen some.
Or heck, even buy the starting goalkeeper.
Sure. Yeah. We've seen some common cards finish top 10 in global recently. Obviously it doesn't happen often, but yeah, I think the correlation just makes a ton of sense there. And so
now the frustrating part when, you get those 3 right and you have 200 points from those 3 players, and then your midfielder DNPs throw your laptop out the window. Yeah. That's why the avoidance is the most important thing in the entire game.
Right. No, I think what's kind of interesting also with if you can find kind of these cheaper defensive stacks, is that if you have a limited budget and you're able to find these cheaper defenders, now you have more money to spend up on midfielders and forwards who could be more likely to have decisives. So I kind of like look at it that way as well.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah. We should also say, I actually don't own any of these guys. And we're not telling anybody to buy them. In fact, their season's almost over. So be careful. Like, we're not here to tell you to buy these guys. This is, in fact, we just told you that they probably won't hit most often.
Right. Do not buy these players. Do not buy these players. I don't own them either.
Right.
Do not buy them.
So captains.
So
I
hate this topic, right?
So the way that I have always, not always, I say that as if I've been doing this for years. There are certain guys in my gallery. I'm not going to stop saying gallery. I realize we've changed this to club.
Yeah.
There's certain guys I feel like that are in my gallery that are my better cards. And so I'm just going to always captain them. It's just going to take like a terrible matchup. And in those situations, like maybe I don't even play them. And even I probably play them anyway. But I just feel like there are certain guys that I'm always going to captain. Like Nicolas De La Cruz is one of them, who just what we said, he's got a 60-point floor. It feels like he's one decisive away from 85. So I want to captain that guy. Am I not thinking enough about it though?
When you have a star like that, I think that you're doing the right thing. Like the old adage, you start your studs, right?
Right.
Well, I think that you captain your studs. I think another thing to look at though, and to think about, is how does this lineup win? And I think that question is really important, because there'll be situations where, like you have that defensive stack, or you have some other stack, or you have some other kind of correlation going on. It's obviously is going to be reliant on that correlation. So if you've built a U23 team with goalkeeper and 2 defenders or something like that. Maybe that's a bad example, but a goalkeeper, you built some team with a goalkeeper and 2 defenders. You may want to captain one of those defenders, because for that lineup to win, you're going to need the clean sheet anyways. So you might as well captain one of the defenders and really hope that they have a good game altogether. I mean, if you have, let's say you have De La Cruz in that lineup too, he might score really good as well. But for you to win, you need the correlation to hit.
So you are more likely to captain the guys who score fewer points from the clean sheet, as opposed to the guy who gets the most points from the clean sheet.
Say that again. Oh, so captaining the goalkeeper, huh?
That's well, I mean, he scores the most points from a clean sheet, so why not just captain that guy?
It just seems like the dumb thing to do, and I think it is the dumb thing to do. Because so he can lose the clean sheet, like we talked about earlier. He can lose the clean sheet, and your defenders can still score well. So when you just look at averages and floors and potential ceilings, I think that all 3 of those things are better for your defenders. And, I said, how does this lineup win? Well, winning can be different. How does this lineup podium? Yeah, maybe the right answer is no. The answer is still not goalkeeper, because your defenders are going to have a higher hit rate of scoring 100 than your goalkeeper ever will, because goalkeeper's never done it, to our knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I know you're trying to bait me into saying captain your goalkeeper, but I'm not going to say it.
You're not falling for it.
In fact, we were kind of talking about this earlier, and the only situation that I can ever think of that you might do it, and you still probably shouldn't, is if you're playing Division 3, you have a defensive stack with 2 defenders that are super rares and a rare goalkeeper. It might make sense to captain your goalkeeper there, but I still wouldn't do it.
So you're still definitely captaining the midfielder.
I think so, yeah.
So I think the ceiling is the important part of all of that, in that defenders are much more likely to score 100 than a goalkeeper. And it's not that defenders score 100 a lot, but they're just their path to 100 is significantly easier than a goalkeeper. And even if the clean sheet is basically guaranteed, it's a matchup against some 12-year-old kids because there's some sort of issue with the first team, so they're not going to score anything. You're not getting any other points from your goalkeeper. There are no keeper sweepers, there are no diving saves. Stopping a penalty. Like, there's just not enough there. And when I think you captain whoever you captain, because you're like, this guy's going to score 100. And so I want the extra points on the guy who's scoring 100. And you're never going to say that about a goalkeeper. And so every so often we see lineups that win, even some podiums that it's a goalkeeper captain. And you're like, see, it works. And it's like, dumb things happen all the time, but that doesn't mean it's right. And so the results shouldn't be more important than the process. And the process that leads you to captaining a goalkeeper, I think, is whatever brought you there was wrong.
Yeah. Like, I was going through all these options and trying to justify it. I was like, okay, sometimes you see people play super rare goalkeepers in Division 3. So that is the equivalent of captaining a rare, but why take that opportunity? Why take the captain opportunity away from someone else that is, more likely to score more?
Mm-hmm.
Why would I do that?
There's no answer. You shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I just think it's one of those things that every so often we see it. And so people are like, oh, maybe I should do that. And it's like, specifically for captains, you want those guys to score as many points as possible. There's a reason that you're captaining them, because you're like, I'm trying to maximize my points. And so I'm going to take this player that I think will score the maximum points. And now I get this bonus. And doing it with a goalkeeper, you're basically saying, I'd like to get extra points on my 70.3 in a best case scenario.
Okay. If you have and this is just another justification for stupidity, but let's say you have Langerak, probably not even pronouncing that right.
Mm-hmm.
Here.
Who hasn't given up a goal since like 2006?
He gave up one the other day, but you're right. He is basically pegged in at 60 every week. They don't give up a lot of shots. He doesn't. I don't know what he does during games, but he's got to be bored out of his mind.
Mm-hmm.
So you can pencil him in most weeks for 60. If you're playing him in All-Star D4, do you captain him just because you know that he's a good like floor play? I know the answer is no. I'm just trying to justify something here.
Yeah, I just really don't think there's ever a situation that it makes the most sense. Like I think if you're in a situation where you're like, this is an ideal matchup for a goalkeeper, I almost feel like the right play is to go buy a defender of that team. Like if you don't have it, like go get one, because if it's such a sure thing, then go buy your 90 points. But like we said earlier,
while we're answering this ridiculous question, I'll ask you another one. If you could play two goalkeepers in a lineup, would you?
No. Oh, God, no. God, no. I actually wanted to ask, now that they have the private leagues on Sorare data, I want to be able to set up a league with no goalkeepers.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That would be fun because we don't have to deal with goalkeepers.
You know, I started a fantasy American football league that my family and friends have played for years. And we removed kickers and defense because kickers and defense are not fun.
No, not fun at all.
Yeah. And I equate kickers and mostly just kickers. Defense, there's some strategy there. Kickers are like our goalkeepers. They're not fun. Yeah,
well, I think the issue with all of them is that it's more so with defenses, but it's just unpredictable variance that that you're benefiting from randomness, and everything that we do from buying cards to setting lineups to deciding what contest we're entering is trying to predict what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And randomness just ruins all of it. And not in a fun way. Like it's one thing if, like, you're playing somebody in a head-to-head and their forward scores a hat trick. You're like, well, that can happen.
Right.
But then, just anything else, 2 goals. My gosh. I'm upset you even brought it up. But I'll invite you to the no goalkeeper.
I'll play. That sounds fun.
Maybe we'll do SO10, or do we make it an 11th? I don't know. We'll see.
I think SO5 with no goalkeeper would be
SO5 with no goalkeeper.
Yeah, they should do that like every week. Just have a no goalkeeper league. Make it like Global All-Star D4. You put anyone there, 5 players, no goalkeeper. Be fun.
Do you think they should do that? Really?
Yeah, it'd be fun
for somebody who owns a bunch of goalkeeper cards and now they're worthless.
It's just another division that we can compete in.
Oh, that's fair. Okay.
Yeah, just another division. Make it like a weekly where there's no power or anything. You just chuck in 5 guys.
So do you put your 5 best guys in that one?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. It would depend on prizes and everything else, but I don't know. It'd be interesting.
What if you have a goalkeeper with 2 defenders, but your 2 defenders are your best 2, and you play them in this non-goalkeeper? See, it's slippery slope here, Black.
Yeah, I know.
I think we touched on everything that I wanted to touch on. We talked about goalkeeper captains. That was the last thing I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, you wanted to end it on that note. What about purchasing strategies?
So I think you need to decide what you want to play before you buy. And I know that sounds really stupid, but I think it goes back to kind of what I was saying in the beginning, that we say in global, like, oh, you can take guys from anywhere. And so just buy 4 cards, play a common, and just go on your way. Mm-hmm. I think before you do that, you have to decide where you want to compete, because there are just for budgetary reasons. It's like the Champion Europe guys tend to be more expensive than Challenger Europe. They're not as many of them. They're more well known, so they're kind of have this collectible aspect. So if you're somebody who's like coming in and you're like, I'm going to grind global for as long as I can, and then try to buy some Champion Europe cards, like that's very different than playing, the Asian Champion Asia or Champion America. Like you can get in a little cheaper, usually, in the lead up to the seasons, we'll call it.
Sure.
So I think it's important when you're buying cards to say, like, what is this card going to get me? Does it get me closer to playing Champion America?
What is my plan for this card?
Right. I think every card should have a plan. And if the plan is I'm buying this card now because I think this guy is going to play better and I'll sell him, like that's okay. Plenty of people who do that. But I think every card should have a plan.
Yeah. So going off that last point, I think a big strategy for me is trying to buy when a player's out of form. Price tends to be lower on those types of players.
Yep.
And sell them when they are in form. I've made this mistake. Amiri is the big one. I bought him right after he had like 6 or 7 like massive games this year. And I had Leon Bailey to pair with them, so I thought it was going to be like a great correlation.
It's printing money.
Ever since I bought him, man, he's just totally downhill. And I bought high, and I'm not selling now. I'm not selling after all of these bad games.
Yeah.
That would be the opposite of what I should do. Buy high, sell low. So I think some of those just basic market mechanics of you want to buy low, sell high. You want to do the same with form. You want to buy them when they're out of form, or be prepared to pay the premium.
I think it's important to buy poor form while still playing, though.
Yeah.
Because there are plenty of guys who stop playing when they're not playing well. And that brings you back to the DNP problem.
Yeah, that said, I mean, if they've totally been dropped from the lineup, at that point, they're going to be pretty cheap. And it's not like guys are going to stay out of the lineup forever.
Yeah.
I mean, they can find their way back into being, totally startable weekly players again. But again, it's patience.
Yeah. I hate that that's the most reasonable advice in all of Sorare. Like you just have so simple, like, yeah, just be patient.
Right.
That's not, I don't want to be patient.
Yeah. I buy guys with like the thought of patience in mind. Like, okay, he's kind of a project guy or whatever. Like, I think he's skilled or he's talented, but he's just not, they don't play him every week. I'm not using him, but like, the thought is like, he's young. Next year might be his year. I don't know.
I think that's reasonable. But I think that point of like, don't pay top price for the recent 3 games is really important.
Yeah.
But it's also, I mean, that's tough to ignore.
Right.
Like guys start playing really well and you're like, man, I really need to have this guy because he's playing so well. And you see a lot of other people, that maybe certain guys that you track and you're like, oh, he has one. He just bought it too. But it's like, you might've missed it already.
A good one to track will be Randall Leal from Nashville. His first 2 games were 100 and like 78 or 80 or something. So I sold the hype on him. So I sold my only copy of his card. Let's see what happens the next few weeks. Did I do a good job at selling the top, or is he going to rip off, 80, and I'm going to look like an idiot?
Well, it depends what you do with the proceeds. Maybe you bought it for a guy who goes 90, 90, 90.
Yeah, very likely.
Bet it wasn't a goalkeeper, though.
Right.
All right. If you guys have enjoyed this podcast, if you could please rate and review it wherever you listen. If you are watching on YouTube, if you could just please hit the like button below. Feel free to subscribe for all of the RotoWire videos as well. We will be back next week with another topic that we haven't finalized yet. So if anybody has anything they'd like us to touch on, please feel free to reach out to us. Again, you can find me on Twitter at RotoWireAndrew. You can find Andy at ablack86. We're also available in the Sorare Discord, so you can easily find us there as well. So, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Andy, I'll talk to you next week.
See ya.
Try RotoWire today, free for 10 days. Get our premium tools, rankings, analysis, and breaking news alerts. No credit card required. Go to rotowire.com/try.